Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is the 23rd part of What If Deku Can't Stop Adopting Kids. Hope you enjoy. Link to the original story and author in the description. Chapter 131. The camp was not as active as one might think, considering it was a camp of barely supervised children. No one was allowed outside the campsite and Sori was to use her keen senses, and the seers, to make sure no one did. This was for two reasons. First was for security reasons. Sori was the only one supervising them, and she couldn't be everywhere at once, so it was better to keep them where she was. The second reason was because there was a ton construction happening all over the property. Not just on the main facility, but also all over the forest. Izuku contracted a bunch of construction companies to work on new projects. And he didn't want the kids interfering with their work. As such, no sparring matches were allowed, nor any use of quirk that jeopardized the safety of others or the camp itself. So pretty much everyone was stuck in their tents. Thankfully they set up a router, so they did have access to the internet. Which meant Kiba was back to her regular routine. "Hello, all my loyal subjects," Kiba said to the camera. "Your queen is alive and well. Lady Kiba, you're alright. I knew no villains could harm her. What the hell happened? Low-life Quirkus scum dared lay their hands on our queen. Fear not, I am completely unharmed. Those villains could not lay even a single hand on me." Kiba lied, with a smile. "As if I would ever let such low-life Quirkus harm my beautiful skin. However, I lament that this stream will be short. Due to the damage done to my property, I can't truly provide much in the ways interesting content for the month and will be taking this opportunity to relax as a queen should. I simply wish to inform all my subjects that their queen is safe, and why I will not be making any more entertainment for a short while." "Oh, woo. Understandable, given the situation. Make sure to rest up, Lady K. Your servants will patiently await your return. We love you, Lady Kiba." "With that said, thank you all for checking in, and farewell for now," Kiba said, before ending the stream. As Kiba was shutting down her equipment, Fu watched from behind. "You're not going to tell them about your new form?" Fu asked her. Immediately all traces of joy drained from Kiba's face, as her expression morphed into a scowl. "Why would I ever tell them about that grotesque form? Especially when I have no intention of ever turning into it again." Fu about expected that reaction. While Kiba remembered nothing about her time while she was transformed, and no one was going to tell her the full story, they had shown Kiba an image taken by the cameras of her transformed state and told her what she was like in that form. And to say she was not a fan would be an understatement. "You know, you may not have a choice," Fu argued. "This seems like a transformation that's triggered, rather than activated." "I don't care. Kiba hissed, turning her head and glaring at him. "I'm not turning into that monster again. End of story." Fu sighed. "Fine, but you may want to sort yourself out before Yonda decides to do that for you. Speaking of which, she's called for a group meeting outside, something about helping out Izuku." This got Kiba's attention and caused her expression to soften. "Well, if it's about helping out caretaker, then I suppose we must attend. Come, and speak no more of that wicked form." With that Kiba got up, and exited the tent, leaving Fu behind. Fu sighed. Kiba. Always so lively. Always so worrying. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX someone standing outside in the middle of the camp. All right. Looks like everyone except Moo is here. And I'm just going to assume he's here, but we can't see him. With that in mind, I'll get right to the point. Right now, Father is working hard to earn us more money. Money? What do we need that for? Ken asked curiously. I thought we had plenty of that? Yonda shook her head. Normally, yes. We would have plenty of money to keep things running as they were before the attack. However, Father has big plans. As you are all aware, the Meta Liberation Army has declared war on US, of the Midoriya Foundation. And to fight a war, you need lots of things. Weapons, soldiers, and much more. All of which father is working to procure, and all of which are very expensive. There was a general sense of unease after that comment, as many of the children were off-put and slightly scared by Yanda's phrasing. While others, "Those creeps, if they come here again, I'll smash them myself," Ken vowed. "As if I still to repay them for the hole in my chest," Nara growled. While Kiba was the one to actually punch through her chest, it was the MLA's fault that Kiba was in that state, to begin with. "I'll burn em up," Netsa shouted, his flames increasing in intensity. "Don't over-exaggerate things, Yanda." Fu rolled his eyes. "We're not at war, a powerful villain group has targeted us, yes. But we're not at war, there is a difference. We're not going to attack them, anything, we just need to defend ourselves from their attacks, until the heroes can eliminate them. That's all. I simply wanted to stress the urgency and importance of the situation. That's all." Yanda huffed. "But you're not wrong. That being said, Father is still gathering up resources to build a better defense for us. And that needs money. Which means we need to start making some." Yanda pointed at Kiba. "Kiba, I'm going to discuss producing merchandise for you to sell via your channel, with Father. Plushies, shirts, outfits, and much more. So get ready to advertise." Kiba nodded. "If it will assist Caretaker, then I'll do it. Shiroku, we need you to produce more outfits for Kiba to wear, this way we can sell more Kiba cosplay," Yanda told her. "Game dev team, once we return, I expect you all to work feverishly. And Ken, you especially should broaden your horizons." "What does that mean?" Ken asked. Yanda shook her head. "You can produce beautiful animations with best graphics technology available. You can do so much with that in terms of money making. You could make a whole shonen battle anime, that would look absolutely stunning." "Huh, I guess I could do that." Ken pondered. "I mean, I'd need someone to write it still, and Fuku's already overworked." Fuku opened her mouth, but Fu shot her a look, and she immediately shut it. "I can make the story," said Mu's voice, coming from seemingly nowhere. "It'll be simple. An easy-to-understand plot, with likable characters, and lots of fight scenes, that's all that's needed, right?" "That's pretty much shonen battle anime in a nutshell," Fu said. "Might need to oversee that as well. As for the rest of you, looks for opportunities to use your talents to earn money in whatever ways you can," Yanda told them. "Or assist others in their efforts. Either way is fine. Please remember, we're all in this together. If Father struggles, we all do. That's all." With that, Yanda left and made her way toward her tent. Everyone immediately started talking among themselves, all except for Fu, who went to follow Yanda towards her tent. Fu entered the tent after her, and Yanda turned to answer him. "Fu, what can I do for you?" Yanda asked. "Why are you so attached to Izuku?" Fu asked outright. "I understand the whole, him giving us a house and food, and all that, but your attachment seems to be greater. Especially considering the kind of person you are." Well, if you're getting right to the point, then so will I. You see, Fu, in general, I despise the human race." Yanda explains simply. "Ever since I got this curse of a quirk, most of what I've heard is hatred, complaints, and schemes on how to hurt other people. So much negativity, it's maddening. Do you have any idea how depressing it is to be me?" "I can guess." Fu nodded. "I can also guess how much of a breath of fresh air Izuku's thoughts are. Exactly, not once does he complain about other people, or think selfishly about how to get ahead. Almost all his thoughts are dedicated to others." Yanda smiled fondly. "Sure, he has his own negative thoughts, mostly self-depreciation, which can be frustrating, but he's about as perfect as one can expect a human to be. And you all aren't so bad either. Almost everyone here is about as good as a human can get in my eyes. And I live far, far away from the mess of thoughts that is the city. This place is as perfect as it can get for me. And I have Father to thank for that. That is the reason for my devotion. I see, so if you hate your quirk so much, why haven't you asked Izuku to get rid of it? Fu asked. I could ask the same of you. Yonda responded. Because I'm dead. Fu answered. My quirk is the only thing keeping me alive. Get rid of that, and I just drop dead. I see. How unfortunate. Yonda shook her head. Well, then I guess it's my turn to answer your question. You see, the reason I don't ask my father to get rid of my quirk is because I've already tried living without it. Fu raised an eyebrow. How? Yonda gestured to her ears. Did you know that these things aren't actually ears? At least they don't function the same way most ears do. Although they look the same as normal ears, they have two unique differences. One is that they let me hear the thoughts of others, and two, they grow back if you cut them off. It didn't take Fu very long to put together what Yonda was implying. Ah. I see. Once you can hear the thoughts of others, and how distrustful and hateful they are, you can't go back. Yonda sighed. Without my quirk, quite frankly, I'd become an insane paranoid mess, well, an even more insane paranoid mess. Does Izuku know that you did that? Fu asked. Yonda rolled her eyes. Of course, he does, it's on my file. Dios es lazy, but even they wouldn't just not record something like this. I guess so. Still, don't do anything like that again. Fu told her firmly. I don't think Izuku could handle much more stress. I know. Yonda nodded. Have a nice day, Fu, and tell Kiba she doesn't have to worry about me. I'll let the therapist deal with her. Unless, of course, the situation is dire. Yeah, I trust that all right. Fu said sarcastically. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Meanwhile, just after Yonda's meeting, Ken and Nara went over to Kiba. Hey, are okay, Kiba? Nara asked the vampiric girl. I feel completely fine, why? Kiba asked in return. We just wanted to make sure you were okay after the whole transformation thing, Ken said awkwardly. I would rather we not speak of that form, Kiba said, before a look of guilt formed on her face. In reality, I should be asking you that. I heard you all had to hold me off while I was in that state. Both Ken and Nara winced at the sheer disgust in Kiba's voice as she talked about herself, both knowing exactly what that felt like. A little. Ken lied, both him and Nara feeling a phantom pain in their chest as they recalled what happened. But it wasn't too bad. Thank goodness, Kiba said. If I had seriously ended up hurting you, I don't think I could truly forgive myself. Ken and Nara flinched as once again they felt pains in their chest. I'd also like to thank you for keeping me from killing that woman. Once again the disgust returned to Kiba's voice. Vile as she was, taking a life like that is something a monster would do. Thank you so much for not allowing such an act. You don't have to thank us, we were just doing what was right, Nara said, giving her a gentle smile. We're trying to become heroes after all, Ken said, forcing a confident smirk. Well, you two have already become heroes, in my eyes. Kiba smiled at them, with a very thankful but also tired look in her eyes. Now excuse me, I grow tired. I would like to take a nap. Neither Ken nor Nara noted how odd it was for her to be tired right when the sun was going down, and just let her make her way back to her tent, before looking at each other with very serious expressions. Do you think lying to her is really the best option? Nara asked with a look of concern. Of course it is. Ken shouted at her, causing Nara to flinch at the sudden aggression. Izuku told us we can't tell her about this. You want to go behind his back after everything he did for us. Ken, calm down. Nara told him. I'm just asking. Ken took a moment, before letting out a deep breath, and looking away from his sister. Sorry, it's just, I know what it's like to become a monster. To just lose control of who you are to something else, and be completely helpless as you do awful things. It's a blessing she doesn't remember what happened. Ken-Nara was about to once again reassure her brother that what happened was not his fault, but he cut her off by looking back up at her with one of the most serious expressions she'd ever seen. She can never know what she did to us back there. Ever. Ken told her. Because I know that if I were her, and I found that out, I'd never be able to forgive myself. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX here for the time being," Sai said, as she, Mr. Nagai, and his wife, as all three of them sat and had some tea together at the dinner table, late at night. I'm sure many others would have been more hesitant, given what's happened, and still happening. It's no issue at all, we're more than happy to help the Midoriya family after such an awful tragedy, Mrs. Nagai said. Especially after he went through the trouble of getting me that raise, feeding 2 extra mouths is no problem, Mr. Nagai said, before raising his eyebrow. Actually, now that I think about it. How did he do that? Sai shrugged. I have absolutely no idea. That boy is frighteningly capable. It was then that Amai and Yami came into the kitchen. Amai was in gaming mode and was practically bursting with energy. Yami, not so much. The poor boy looked tired, to say the least. Don't worry about us, we're just here to pick up some more gamer fuel, Amai said as she ran over to pull from her massive stash of Nintendo and Doritos. You look like you're having fun, dear, just make sure not to stay up too late. Mr. Nagai chuckled as he watched his daughter grab her junk food excitedly while Yami watched and tried to keep his eyes open. Sorry, but nope. Me and Yami are gonna keep gaming, all night long, Amai yelled as she ran out of the kitchen. Yami sighed as he followed her. I'm going to die. As the two left the kitchen, Mr. Nagai laughed. I'm so glad those two met, I've never seen my little girl look so happy before. Yes, companionship, truly is a wondrous thing. Sai chuckled. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX together. Alright, Yami, just focus your magic on the boss. Amai said, before looking at Yami's character, who was currently walking into a wall. What are you dash? Amai was interrupted when she felt Yami fall onto her shoulder. Ugh, hi. Yami was currently struggling to stay awake, barely keeping his eyes open. Amai saw that her partner was struggling, and was snapped out of gamer mode for a minute. Hey, you can go to sleep if you want. Not everyone is suited for hardcore gaming. Yami shook his head. Wanna keep going? Want to keep making you happy? Pop. It was then that Amai's face went red, and pink candies started popping out of her body. As Yami lost his battle against his need for sleep, Amai just looked at her friend's sleeping form. Oh, I'm just gonna keep falling, won't I? Game over. Chapter 132, Plans for Tomorrow. In the home of Blue Blur, stationed in the living room, were three figures. Sitting on the couch was the hero Blue Blur himself. The man was rather short and young-looking, one could almost mistake him for a teenager despite him being 35. As you might expect, his hair was bright blue, arranged in long spiny locks going down to his back, and it complemented his bright green eyes. He was currently wearing his hero outfit, which was just a blue hoodie and shorts, along with a pair of specially made, red and white shoes. Sitting next to him was a woman named Uchibara. Miru's girlfriend and a biologist researching the capabilities of plants, and her appearance complemented that. She was a rather petite woman, almost as short as Blue, and had smooth green hair, with 2 roses growing out of the sides of her head. She was wearing a green and white dress, and a pair of green slippers. Both of them were looking up at Miru, who was looking at them with a huge grin on her face, and her twin tails wagging back and forth. Okay, Miru gonna tell us what's got you so excited? Blue asked, impatiently, leaning on the couch and tapping his foot. You look like you're about to take off. Yes, please tell us what happened. I'm curious who I have to thank for you being this adorably happy. Uchi giggled at the sight of her overjoyed girlfriend. Miru blushed. Well, to you answer your question, dear, that would be none other than my new boss, Izuku Midoriya. Both Blue and Uchi's eyes widened. Wait, Blue said, putting his hands in front of him to signal Miru to stop. Wasn't the guy who got attacked by villains like 2 days ago? Yep, okay, it's kind of a long story, but let's start from the beginning. Mai slowed herself down, so she didn't confuse them. So remember how I was talking about chaos energy and all the possible uses for it, and how I wish someone else would finally wake up to its potential besides me? Kinda? Blue shrugged, as he cleaned his ear. I do. You were absolutely furious when they told you to move on to other projects. Uchi recalled her girlfriend ranting to her long into the night about the incompetence and laziness of her bosses and co-workers. I was also quite intrigued by it. I wish I could have studied its effects on Flora. Well, someone finally did see that I was right, and that person was Izuku Midoriya, Miru said proudly. Midoriya was finally about to get that kid who gives off the chaos energy into his care, and as he was reading the papers, he found some of my notes, and that piqued his interest. So he asked to speak with me personally, and I managed to convince him about its capabilities. And so he made me the head of the new Midoriya Foundation branch, for scientific research and development. That's great. But what does an orphanage need a scientific research and development branch for? Blue asked, looking even more confused. Well, technically the Midoriya Foundation is an orphanage, rather a child care facility. Miru corrected. Blue rolled his eyes. Okay, question still stands, what does a child care facility need a research and development branch for? Who cares? I'm going to be the head of a new branch. I'll get as much freedom as I want to study and test chaos energy, and I get a big budget to do so. Miru shouted with enthusiasm, stars twinkling in her eyes. Yes, and we are very happy for you, but we would also like to know why a child care facility is interested in such a thing, Uchi told her in a calm voice. It is rather odd. I don't know, he just said he'd give me all the freedom and funding I wanted, so long as made some stuff for him at his request every now and then. Miru shrugged. I think he just wants me to help him increase security around his facility. Okay, that sounds reasonable, Blue said. I've already been working on a few tasks with him, just some basic stuff, fortifications, turrets, watchtowers, weaponizing his private army, stuff like that, Miru said causally. What was that last part? Uchi stopped her. Oh yeah, so remember how Midoriya has those demon monster things? Well, he wants to see if I can increase their effectiveness, Miru explained. Experiment with them, weaponize them further, anything to make them more powerful and effective. I'm actually really looking forward to seeing their reaction to chaos energy. Something about this doesn't seem right, Uchi said, looking at Miru with concern. I mean, I guess I understand his motive, but it seems like he's overreacting a bit. Then again, he was attacked by an army of villains. Yeah, but what are the chances that's gonna happen again? Blue asked. But if it does happen again, he might not get so lucky, and one of the kids could get hurt. Miru countered. He's still being targeted by the MLA, and because he's quirkless, he'll always be targeted by them and other quirkist groups. Man, those guys are such scum. Blue spat in disgust. I can't wait until the police find out where those cowards are hiding, then I'll take him down myself. Well, if anything, I doubt Midoriya Izuku has any bad intentions. He seems like a good enough person from what I've heard of him. Uchi still looked troubled. Although, while I'm happy to see someone recognizing your talents, I can't help but be concerned about this. Are you sure you can manage running an entire branch of a foundation by yourself? Of course, I can, probably. Miru started thinking about it and cringed a bit. I mean, I don't really know how to handle hiring people, or instructing people, or managing. Maybe I do need a little help. Uchi shook her head but smiled fondly. Always taking on big challenges, even if you don't know how to handle them. I suppose we can ask my mother about this, she has experience with this kind of thing, then again she did marry my father, so perhaps we should look elsewhere for advice. Yeah, but I was also wondering if maybe you'd wanna, come and work with me? Myru asked her nervously, looking away from her girlfriend with a blush on her face. Uchi's eyes widened. Well, I should have seen that coming, Blue smirked. Doesn't it feel a little off hiring your girlfriend before anyone else is a bit much? Not even being subtle here, Myru's face got much redder. IIWWLI. Ahahaha. I'm just messing with ya. It's fine. Blue chuckled as Myru glared at him and pouted. I'd be more than happy to work with you, Uchi said. Myru looked back at her girlfriend to see her smiling up at her, a bit of excitement lit up in her eyes. I had been wanting to research chaos energy's effect on flora, and I'll get to spend time with you more. Uchi's face also turned slightly red as she said that out loud. It's a win-win. Myru's face absolutely lit up, a smile spreading across her face so wide it hurt, and her tails were just spinning around behind her. Yes. Oh, this is gonna be amazing. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX repaired Midoriya house. Well, that didn't take nearly as long as I thought, Mr. Uraraka said. Still, glad this is all over with so them kids can get back to livin' in a house again. Oh, they can't go back in yet, Izuku said, looking down at some blueprints in his hands. Your job was to repair the house, but that's far from the only construction that needed to happen around here. The barracks have also been completed, but construction on the laboratory, testing grounds, the turrets, the security towers, and of course now that the house is done, I need to get to work on adding a proper safe room and dash. Whoa there little boss, I get the picture, Mr. Uraraka said, stopping Izuku before he could go on a tangent. But how come I wasn't informed of any of this before? Sorry to say, but there wasn't really a need, Izuku told him, trying to put this in the best way possible. Unfortunately, your business simply doesn't have the tools required to handle things like that. You were really only here to help rebuild the house, everything else is being handled by more advanced companies. Mr. Uraraka sighed and shook his head. Yeah, I should have figured. Don't worry boy, I don't take offense to it. But still, you ain't overworking yourself again, are ya? Izuku sighed and rolled up the blueprints. Maybe. I do feel really tired. Maybe it is time I take a Brea dash. Brrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr Chol. Hold that thought. The stressed teen answered his phone and held it up to his ear. Hello? Mr. Midoriya, I'm glad to hear your voice. Izuku heard Chol breath a sigh of relief. I just heard about the villain attack. Just now, it's been half a month? Izuku pointed out. Okay, I live in America. Do you know how rare it is for us to hear about news that happens outside the country? Chol pointed out. Fair enough, but don't worry, we're all fine over here, and we're working on fixing and improving the house and property, Izuku explained. When should I expect you here? Hopefully, I'll have everything done by then. Soonish, I'm leaving in about a week, so I should be there in about that amount of time, Chol said. Well, the house construction should be done by then at least. Izuku calculated. I apologize, but the time I give you to adjust before you start work might be short. I have a really full plate. I can imagine, and you don't need to apologize. Believe me, people have asked far more ridiculous things of me, for much stupider reasons, Chol reassured him with a sigh. And at least you give me a heads up, rather than springing work on me out of nowhere. I'll be prepared when you need me. Thank you. Before Izuku could finish, suddenly, someone else called him. Nami. Izuku, now with a headache, sighed into the phone. Sorry, I have to take another call. That's fine, I'll speak to you before I leave, thank you, Chol said, before hanging up, allowing Izuku to pick up Nami's call. Hey buddy. Nami, for once, sounded strangely guilty, which made Izuku tense up, as he wondered what horrible thing must have happened to make Nami of all people feel guilt. Sue. I just want to say, I'm sorry. What did you do? Izuku asked, sounding just utterly exasperated. Me. Nothing but I know you have a lot on your plate, like, a lot, but I kinda gotta add more. Sorry dude, we need to have another meeting. Nami said apologetically. Why? Izuku asked, not sounding any less tired. Well, remember that assassin girl, the first one, not the second one. The one with the horns. Nami said. The one that was in coma, while she's awake. Izuku was silent for a while, taking in the sheer amount of work that statement implied, before taking a deep breath. Call me a car, I'll sleep on the way there. XXXXXXXXXXX. Izuku wasted no time when he got to the DOC building, telling the agents to quickly guide him to the meeting room, and once he made it there, he immediately entered the room, where Nami was waiting for him. What's the situation? Izuku asked immediately, wanting to get this meeting over with so he could get back to work. Around 24 or 26 hours ago, the girl, I think her name was Nise or something, woke up from her coma. Nami was cut off. If she woke up that long ago, why was I only now informed? Izuku asked her curtly, having approximately zero patience right now. Well, the police had to talk with her first, and then we had to report it to the higher-ups, and then to you, Nami explained. So that's why it took so long. Understandable. Izuku sighed. Please continue. Alright, so she woke up, and yeah, she has amnesia, Nami explained with an apologetic look. Izuku face-bombed. Of course she does. You couldn't get any information from her? None. We tried to repair her mind with quirks, but unfortunately, her physics-based quirk caused complications with any quirks trying to affect her mind. Like it's resisting our attempts. Nami sighed. Because of course. Nothing can be simple. Ugh. Izuku groaned. If that was the case, then even Kyoko wouldn't be able to do anything to help here. Although, maybe that's a good thing, kids shouldn't have to remember being assassins. Yeah, but it sure as hell makes our jobs so much fucking harder. Nami groaned. Izuku shook his head before moving on to the next topic. Anyway, what's going to happen to her now? Well, she'll be transferred to your care as soon as possible. Nami sighed. Sorry man, but DOC doesn't want to waste any resources holding her, so it's from the hospital to your house. I should have known. Izuku rubbed the bridge of his nose. So I'll be receiving 4 people once the house is repaired. 4? Nami raised an eyebrow. I have a new employee coming in, with her daughter, Izuku explained. Don't worry about it. Although, I'll also be looking for more hired help, so I might need to make even more accommodations. Man, I would hate to be you dude, Nami told him. I know this sounds kind of impossible in your situation, but please make sure you don't overwork yourself again. Remember, everyone's fucked if you die. Izuku, believe me, I remember. Chapter 133, Back in Business. Alright everyone, finally the Midoriya Foundation building is officially repaired. Izuku announced, standing on the stairs of the now repaired building, looking down at all the children, and Sori, who were standing in front of him eagerly waiting to be let in. Yeah! The children cheered. Finally, I can go back to the safety of my room. Fuku almost cried tears of joy, with Kei patting her on the back. I think you've been doing great, Fuku, you were super helpful back at camp, Kei reassured her cheerfully. Yes, your cooking ability was absolutely essential to our survival. Kiba praised her. I just can't wait to get back to work on the game, Ken said. Indeed. Yanda said. Although with Yami still not here, it'll likely take a bit longer. Sorry about that, but Yami still needs to be with Amai so that way he can get more negativity in the city, Izuku told them. But don't worry, I'm sure he and Amai will visit every now and again. Can we go inside now? I want to play video games with everyone again. Netsu asked. Yes, but before anything, there is something I need to show you all, Izuku told them. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX towards the wall past the stairs. He then pressed down on a secret hidden button on the wall, and the wall opened up, revealing a hidden room. Whoa! Most of the kids, and Sori gasped as Izuku brought them into the secret room. It was rather basic. Just a metal room, with some futons, and crates full of supplies. This is the new safe room, Izuku explained, before pointing at the crates. In those crates are lots of food and water, just in case you ever need to stay in here for a long time. The room's not as durable as the training room, but it's hidden. Meaning that no one can warp in here. Speaking of which, everyone, it's very important that none of you mention this room to anyone. Especially you, Kiba. If villains like that mist guy find out about this place, then it'll no longer be as safe. Understood? Yes. The children answered, understanding the importance of keeping this secret. Alright, now, all of you are free to go, Izuku told them. Yaha! The children cried as they ran out of the room, all looking to get things back to normal. Can I go too, boss? Sori asked him hopefully. I want to go eat some tuna. Not yet, there's a room I have to show you, Izuku told her. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Izuku brought Sori into a room on the second floor, one that was covered in screens, displaying the forest and the house. There were also several seers on one side of the room, as well as several terminals with buttons on them underneath the screens. This is the security room. Here you can see all the cameras set up throughout the property, Izuku explained, before mourning over the terminals. And here are the controls for the defenses. Defenses? I thought the monsters were the defenses? Sori asked. Yes, but I also added something new, Izuku explained, before pressing a button on the terminal. Suddenly, in the forest, a hidden turret popped out of the ground. Whoa, you're really not messing around, boss. Sori whistled, as Izuku pressed another button, causing the turret to go back into the ground. I never mess around when it comes to my children's safety, Izuku told her seriously. I don't really need to explain anything more about this room to you. I doubt you'd remember what most of these buttons do, to be honest. Yeah, you're probably right. Sori agreed. And that sounds super boring anyway. I'll leave most of this to Sai, Izuku told her. Alright, you are free to go. Thanks, boss. Sori said as she sped out of the room. Ring ring. Once she left, Izuku breathed a sigh of relief. Okay, 2-hour nap. Then back to work. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Finally. Fuku's back. Where she belongs. Fuku said as she entered her room, a look of pure relief on her face. The lavender-haired girl jumped on her bed, flopping face first onto her sheets, and digging her head into her pillow. Oh bed, how Fuku missed you. She then jumped up, ran over to her window, and picked up her Venus flytrap. Aren't you glad to be home, Petey? Of course, the plant didn't talk back, and Fuku eventually set it down, before sitting back down on her bed. It was nice having solid walls around her again. The flimsy wall of the tents provided little comfort to Fuku, especially after such a harrowing attack. It didn't help that she could hear everything that went on outside, and every little noise that happened around her tent convinced Fuku that there was going to be another villain attack. Thankfully Fuku's tent was isolated, meaning no one got exposed to all the gas she'd been pumping out. After taking some more time to soak in the feeling of returning to her room, Fuku wondered what to do next. Should I get back to work so soon? I mean, I know Yonda said that we need to focus on the game, but... Fuku sighed and pouted a bit. I really want to just relax and watch some anime. I'm sure they won't mind if I just watch a few episodes before I get back to work. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Welcome back, my minions. Kiba said into the camera, as she started up her stream in her room. Your queen has returned. At long last. For 1,000 years she'd lain dormant, and now the Queen of Eternal Darkness has arisen. Lady Kiba has risen. Celebrate and bask in her presence. I know the wait has been long and agonizing, but at long last, my fortress has been repaired. Kiba beamed at the camera confidently, happy to be able to produce content for her loyal fans once again. And to celebrate my return, it's time to continue my Elden Ring Let's Play. Alright. Rage time. Thank you, Lady K. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Sheena opened the door to her room and just stared at the room inside. It wasn't anything grand. It was just a basic room. But it was hers. Her room. At the Midoriya Foundation. Yes, she'd been adopted by Izuku for a month now, but staying in the camps, she just hadn't quite felt like she was a part of the family now. She took a few steps into the room, and then fell to her knees, as tears started falling from her eyes. It worked. It really worked. I'm free. For her entire life, she longed for this. To be free of the horrible system she'd been unfortunately born into. When she'd heard of the raid on the Midoriya Foundation, she knew that was her chance, but now, here she was. It worked. She'd never have to kill again. Yes, it must be such a relief. Sheena turned around and saw Yonda standing in her doorway with a smile on her face. I was quite happy when I got my room too. Yonda told her, inviting herself in. It really gives the feeling of being away from all that stuff from the past. Like you're getting a new start. Like you're part of the family. Wow, she is scary. Sheena thought automatically. She hadn't talked with many of the children. Given her less than stellar first impression, many of the other children were wary of her, and as such Sheena decided it was best to hide away in her tent. The only person she'd really talked to was Kay. Yonda had also never seemed afraid of her, but the same could not be said in reverse. The psychic girl reminded her of all her least favorite people. Clever people. Filled with lies and ambitions. And she just seemed so much smarter than she should be, and her ability to read her thoughts gave her goosebumps. Sheena's eyes widened as she realized Yonda heard what she just thought. Wait. I didn't mean that I. Ahahahaha. Sheena cringed, as she heard Yonda laughing inside of her head. Oh dear, don't worry, I don't mind. There are just some people, or rather a lot people, who just don't feel comfortable around me. For good reason. But you don't have to worry. I'm not gonna do anything to you. I have reason to. After all, while the others are unsure of you given where you came from, I know better. I know you. Our tents were rather close by, you see, and well, I can hear thoughts through walls. Sheena's eyes widened with shock and fear, and she fell back on her butt and started scooting away from Yonda. Wait. Were you listening to my thoughts for a month? Indeed I have. And because of that, I can now say I trust you, about 90%. You're not some hardened assassin. Yonda smiled at her. Just a scared little girl, happy to be free, with no idea what to do now. Sheena gulped. She wasn't used to this. Back with the MLF, the only thing she really had was her private thoughts. But Yonda could hear everything and read her like the back of her hand. It was terrifying. Oh, don't be so scared, I'm on your side. Yonda told her, putting her hands behind her back. Because you and I have a common goal. I doubt that, Sheena tried to think of something to respond with, but she was too scared. Yonda sighed and shook her head. No, this won't do, you're much too terrified. She then pulled out a piece of candy from her pocket and threw it onto Sheena's lap. Eat it. Now. Not wanting to figure out what would happen if she refused, Sheena quickly proceeded to unwrap and eat the candy. Quickly she felt her nerves start to calm, and she released the breath she'd been holding up to now. Feeling better? It's calming candy. It's made by an acquaintance of ours, who can make candy that can affect emotions. Yonda explained. And now that you're calmer, let me explain a bit when I said we had similar goals. You see, I like there to be a positive vibe in this house. Positive thoughts are so much nicer to listen to than negative thoughts, and so having the others continue to not trust you would go against my interest. Does that make sense? I guess. Sheena still didn't trust her, but she did make sense. Go. And of course, you want to be liked by the other, right? Yonda asked her. Yes, where is this going? Sheena asked fearfully. Where it's going, Sheena my dear, is that we should, and should I mean will, work together, to improve your image with the others. Yonda explained to her. Isn't that wonderful? Not really, you're really scary. I mean yes. Sheena quickly corrected. Good. Now, the best way to do that is to use your skills to help improve the household. Yonda told her. Unfortunately, the only things you are adept at are murder and reading. Not that that's your fault, I suppose. You were given little opportunity for much else. Thanks for reminding me. Sheena thought bitterly, before again realizing Yonda could hear her. I mean. Now obviously it'll be difficult to use such skills, but I found a way, you're welcome. Yonda continued with a smile. Tonight you'll be joining Kay in reading bedtime stories to Kai. I already went through the liberty of informing her. She'll be coming to get you around bedtime. You couldn't have asked me first? Sheena asked her with a bit of despair in her tone. Oh? Do you not want to improve your reputation? Or do you find reading to someone else that bad? Yonda asked her. Well, no. Sheena thought. Perfect, then be ready by tonight, don't want to disappoint anyone. Yonda told her, as she made her way to the door. Have a nice first day in the house. We'll talk more later. For now, enjoy your time, I'd suggest finding some new hobbies, remember, you are free to choose. And with that, Yonda closed the door, leaving Sheena alone in her room. Do I? Sheena thought to herself with a sigh. It's not that she had a problem with reading stories to Kai, especially if Kay was going to be there. But didn't like that choice had been made for her. She'd had enough of that for one lifetime. At least I know what I'm doing now. Sheena sighed. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Meanwhile, Yonda was just exiting Sheena's room with a smile on her face. Well, that wasn't very nice, was it? Yonda's eyes widened, and she quickly turned around to see Fu right behind her. Fu, how did you sneak up on me? I was just brain dead for a little while. Fu explained with a shrug. Made my head so empty you couldn't even read my thoughts. But I could still hear everything happening around me, including your little conversation. Yonda groaned. You are insanely inconvenient for me, you know that? You're smart, difficult to manipulate, you enjoy being embarrassed so I can't even blackmail you, and now you can sneak up on me. Well, someone needs to keep you in check. Fu said. Speaking of which, give the poor girl a break. If she's being truthful like you said, then she's been through enough, don't you think? Oh please. Yonda rolled her eyes. Life doesn't stop for anyone or anything, and the sooner she gets people to trust her the better. Better for her, or better for you? Fu asked with his arms crossed. Yes. Yonda answered. The sooner is over, the sooner we can both enjoy our time here without that eating away at us. Well, you have a point. But still, don't just boss her around, or else I'm telling Izuku. Fu threatened. Oh, come on. Yonda whined. That girl is so timid and scared of me it'll take forever to get anything done with her. Well, here's a thought, maybe make her less afraid of you. Fu rolled his eyes. Either way, tone down your help or else. Understood. Ugh. Fine. Yonda agreed, knowing she didn't really have a choice. Good. Remember, I have my eyes on you. Fu told her, before turning and walking away. Yonda sighed. This is going to take much longer now. Great. Chapter 134, Knees and Easy. The day right after the house was repaired, Izuku went to the hospital. Thankfully this time, it wasn't for himself. Rather, he was here for someone else. "Izuku buddy, glad you're here," Nami said as she met Izuku in the halls of the hospital, the two of them walking down it with DOC agents on both sides of them, escorting them down. Early as usual. "I'm surprised you're here early," Izuku replied. "Actually, I'm late. The time I'm required to be here, and the time you're supposed to be here, are very different." Nami sighed. "Sometimes, very rarely, it pays to be you, metaphorically speaking that is, in terms of cash it always pays to be you." "What's the status on the girl?" Izuku asked, getting straight to the point. "Well, she woke up in a hospital, no memory of who she was, surrounded by armed guards, and was constantly assaulted by questions she didn't have the answer to and that implied not so nice things," Nami explained. "Take a guess at her status." Izuku sighed. "Have you at least confirmed she's not dangerous?" "Yeah, mostly," Nami answered. "She doesn't want to hurt anyone if that's what you're worried about, but she's weak, scared, and has no idea how to use her quirk, so if she freaks out, she might accidentally break a few bones." Izuku gave an even deeper sigh. "But we're sure she doesn't want to kill me? Like I told you, if you die we're fucked. So naturally, we made sure that her amnesia was the real deal, and that she had no intention of harming you before we'd ever let you two meet face to face." Nami reassured him. "And with that cloak, you'll be fine." "That's not as reassuring as you think it is." Izuku shook his head. Soon enough, the two arrived at a room with two armed guards. Izuku took a deep breath. "Well, let's just hope for the best." With that, Izuku entered the room. Despite the guards outside, inside was just a fairly standard hospital room. Inside on the bed, was Nise herself, looking at Izuku with a terrified expression. For a few seconds, there was silence as Izuku slowly entered the room, getting a bit closer to her hospital bed, while he waited for her to ask questions that never came. After almost a minute, Izuku realized the girl was waiting for him to speak. So he put on his friendliest smile and spoke in his warmest voice. "Hello there, I am Director Midoriya Izuku, head of the Midoriya Foundation. But you can call me Izuku, or Midoriya. Or whatever you'd like really. It's pleasure to meet you." "Me, Doriya," Nose repeated in a timid voice. I heard that name, they said they would send me to you, is that bad?" No. It's a good thing. You see, I run a facility for children who are special." Izuku chose his words carefully. "I've heard you had some issues with your quirk." The girl looked away, fear and guilt reflecting in her eyes, confirming Izuku's statement. "Well, I'm here to help you with that," Izuku explained to her. "You'll be taken out of this place and to my home, where I'll take care of you and help you learn to control your quirk, so you don't accidentally hurt anyone." Nise looked at him, slightly less fearfully now. "You're going to take care of me?" Izuku nodded. "That's right, and you'll be surrounded by other wonderful kids, just like you. And other people who will help and protect you." Nise didn't respond. Instead, she looked down and adopted a thoughtful expression, as well as looking quite confused. Izuku took on a sympathetic look. "I understand this must be overwhelming. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them." The girl immediately looked back up at him, hope welling in her desperate eyes. "Really? Really?" Izuku nodded. Nise looked relieved and took a few seconds to get her thoughts together. "Who am I? What happened to me? Where are my dash? Stop asking questions." Smack. "Ah!" Nise cried, as suddenly one of her vectors smacked her in the face. "Nise?" Izuku rushed forward and looked at her left cheek, which was now red. "What happened? Did you lose control of your quirk again?" Did you hear that?" Nise asked him, looking around wondering where that voice came from. "Hear what?" Izuku asked, looking confused. He looked around as well, but no one was there but them. A minute of silence passed before Nise concluded that no one was around them. She looked back up at Izuku. Who am I? What happened to me? Where are my parents? Ah, yes, of course you'd ask that. Izuku sighed as he stepped back and tried to think of a way to explain things without giving away too much. Was I a bad person? Nise asked in a very low voice, once again looking frightened and clutching her blanket. Those people keep asking if I want to kill someone. Why would they ask that? Did I hurt someone? Was a bad guy? No. Izuku quickly reassured her, before realizing he had to explain. Well, you weren't a bad person, at least, unfortunately. We don't know much about your background, but what we do know is that your parents were not good people. They treated you badly, and they forced you to try and hurt me. But before you could get close to me, you ran into one of my sons and got into a fight. He won and hit you a bit too hard in the head, which is how you ended up here without your memory. The girl stayed silent for a while, taking in and processing Izuku's words. I tried to hurt you? You were forced to, Izuku reassured her. From what Fu told me, you didn't really want to. That didn't seem to improve her mood much, and the girl is still looking down at her bedsheets with tears glimmering in the corner of her eyes. Maybe I should have lied a bit more. Izuku thought to himself as he tried to think of a way to reassure her. In the end, he ended up going up to her bed and putting a hand on her head. The girl flinched, but thankfully she didn't push him away, instead just looking up at him curiously. It's not your fault. And besides, that's all in the past now. Your parents can't make you do any more bad things. Izuku told her. You're free to do whatever it is you want to do. Whatever I want to do? Nise repeated, before looking back down at her bed. What I want to do, what do I want to do? I don't know, and it's okay if you don't either, Izuku said with a smile. Because we're going to find out. And I'll do everything I can to help you. Really? Nise asked, looking up at Izuku hopefully. Izuku nodded. Really? Nise just kept looking up at him, hope brimming in her eyes, and eventually, tears. Suddenly Izuku felt something touch his back and push him forward, where he then stumbled into Nise's embrace. Thank you. Nise cried as she buried her head into Izuku's stomach. Thank you. SHSSSH. It's okay. Izuku told her, as he started petting her head. Everything's going to be okay. XXXXXXXXX. Fu was currently once again in the library, enjoying a good book when suddenly his phone started ringing. The undead boy looked down at the phone and saw that it was none other than Izuku calling. Hey, Dad. Fu started as she picked up the call. What's up? Hey Fu, so I'm not gonna be back home tonight, Izuku explained, and Fu could practically hear him wince. Why? Fu asked immediately. You didn't get kidnapped by another child again, did you? No. No, kind of. Izuku answered, causing Fu to sigh. It's not that I got kidnapped, I just can't leave right now. Just tell me what's going on. Fu asked. Well, do you remember that Nise girl that you defeated a while back? Izuku asked him. Please don't tell us she's coming to live with us? Fu asked. How did you know? Izuku responded, shocked he figured it out so quickly. Why? Fu asked, not even bothering with Izuku's question. She tried to kill you. Sheena is one thing, but that girl really wanted you dead. How can DOC think this is a good idea and, wait a minute, are you with her right now? Yes, Izuku revealed. Fu wanted to slam his head into the table. I could have sworn you said, you'd be taking better care of your health. I can explain. Izuku said quickly. She has amnesia, you see. So she doesn't want to kill me anymore. And what happens if her memory comes back? Fu asked. Are we even sure that she really has amnesia? We are sure that she has amnesia. DLC checked out her head as best they could, so we know she's not faking it. Izuku assured him. And people don't typically get their memories back after losing them. That's mostly just TV stuff. Either way, it's not really like I have much of a choice. Even if I wanted to refuse, I couldn't. She's an OPC, and since she no longer wants to kill me, DOC sees no reason not to give her to me immediately. If I tried to refuse, I'd be going against the agreement I signed, which would have very dire consequences. Fu sighed. Ugh, well. Why does this mean you can't leave? As you can imagine, waking up in a hospital surrounded by guards with no memory of anything, and not being able to see her parents, has taken a toll on her mentally, Izuku explained. Right now I'm the only person she really trusts, and well, she doesn't want to leave her side just yet. And she can't go with me until tomorrow, so. Alright, so what do you want me to do? Fu asked. Do you mean to tell everyone so they don't freak out when you show up tomorrow? Yeah, sorry to burden you with this, but I can't leave her right now, Izuku said apologetically. I understand. You have that cloak on, right? Fu asked. Of course, Izuku confirmed. Alright, keep your guard up, and be careful, Fu told him before sighing. Hopefully the others take this well. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. What do you mean that assassin girl is coming to live here? Fu sighed, as Kiba held him, grabbing both his arms so tight he was sure she'd broken some bones. The boy had gathered everyone in the cafeteria. Of course Mu was nowhere to be seen and Fuku was hiding under a table where she thought no one could see her. And told them the news about Knees. They reacted about as well as you can expect. I just told you, she has amnesia, doesn't want to kill Dad anymore, and she's an OPC. Fu explained. So naturally, she'd end up here. There's nothing natural about it at all. Fuku objected. She wanted to kill Izuku, so why is she coming to live here? What if she gets her memories back? Yeah, I may not be the brightest, but I'm pretty sure this is a bad idea, Suri spoke up. I don't want to hear that coming from you of all people, Fu said, glaring at Suri a bit. Look, I don't like this either, but it's what's happening, so get over it. Easy for you to say, some of us react like normal people. Ken scoffed before Nara elbowed him for insensitivity. Ow. What was that for? I also want everyone to remember that not only does she have amnesia, but her original reason for wanting to kill Dad was because her parents mistreated her, and she was desperate for attention. Fu crossed his arms. Let's not pretend some of us here wouldn't have killed someone if you thought it would make your parents love you. TCH. Low blow. Ken muttered. She was a victim, a dangerous victim, but still a victim, Fu told everyone. And now, for right now, she's not dangerous anymore. So don't treat her poorly. Easier said than done, Kiba replied, before letting Fu go, and looking over to Shina in the back of the room, staying silent. Shina, do you know anything about this girl, Knees? Shina shook her head. No. Knees probably isn't even her real name. When we're sent on missions we usually used fake names to hide our identities. Great, somehow we know even less about her now, Kiba grunted. I understand your frustration, dear sister, but do calm yourself. Yonda told her. Father no idiot, and he knows what's at stake if he dies. If he didn't think this was safe, then he wouldn't have done it, especially not so soon after his collapse. As a mind reader, I can vouch that he thinks more about his safety than he used to. Kiba didn't look very reassured. Actually, Yonda, Dad gave you orders to keep an eye on her. To be specific, your room is right next to hers. Fu told her. Wonderful, I was intending on doing that anyway, this just makes things easier. Yonda said, sounding very pleased. Everyone else, if you can't trust her for now, just avoid her, but don't make it obvious you doing so, Fu told them. That's also just, feel free to do whatever it is you were doing. With that Fu walked away, leaving them all to deal with the aftermath of the news. Everyone, I know you must hate the idea of Father being at risk, and so do I, Yonda stated. But as Shina here has shown, being an MLA assassin wasn't really a choice. Yeah, but Sheena never really tried to kill anyone, Nara argued. This girl, on the other hand, was dead set on killing Izuku. Even I'm not sure about this, Sheena admitted, fidgeting uncomfortably. Well, rest assured, dear siblings, if this girl has a single thought about harming our dear father, I will now. And then Sheena gave them all a very dangerous smile. And she won't ever get the chance to act. Chapter 135, Lending a Hand. Izuku was careful not to move too much in the car, as a DOC agent drove him and Nise to the Midoriya Foundation. Nise was currently sitting next to Izuku, and by next to him, that meant she was clutching his side. Considering he was still wearing his robe, Izuku needed to be very careful when he moves, otherwise one of the bony parts would poke her. So, are you excited to see your new home? Izuku asked her hopefully, trying to plant some positive thoughts in her head and start a conversation. Yes? Nise said, sounding completely unsure. And the conversation ended right there. Izuku didn't know what he was expecting. It'd be hard to get a conversation from someone who barely knew anything and was still quite frightened. It's gonna take a while before she gets comfortable. Izuku sighed, as the car approached the facility. The car pulled up the gates, and Izuku pressed a button on his phone to open them. Quickly, the car pulled up to the house, stopping in front of it. Are you ready? Izuku said, looking down at Nise. Nise hesitated, but eventually, she looked up and nodded, taking Izuku's hand to comfort herself. Izuku opened the door, and the two exited the car, closing the door behind them as the car drove off. Welcome home, Nise. XXXXXXXXXXXX. The two walking into through the door, with Nise holding his hand and walking behind him. And the moment they stepped in, they were met with Fu, waiting for them a few feet away. Hey, welcome home. Fu greeted. He looked over at Nise, who shrunk away behind Izuku's cloak. You must be Nise then. Nice to meet you. My name is Fu, short for Fuhai. But please don't call me that. And this dash. Then Kyosei popped out a tentacle head, causing Nise to flinch. Is Kyosei, Fu said, before Kyosei sunk back into his body. He's my brother, but we're kind of sharing a body. Don't worry about it, you'll understand more later. Okay, Nise said quietly, relaxing a little bit now that Fu had introduced himself. Izuku moved away from Nise, before kneeling down to meet her eye to eye. I have to deal with some paperwork, meaning I'm going to be busy for a little while, but Fu's going to show you around. Is that okay? Nise wanted to refuse, but she also didn't want to make Izuku angry. He was her only ally right now and she was terrified of losing him. She looked at Fu and there was something about him that seemed familiar. Like she'd seen him somewhere before. She just needed to try and remember a bit. You don't have to go back to them. Ag! Nise shouted out in pain, falling to her knees as suddenly her head started to hurt like hell. Aga! Nise? Izuku shouted out in concern and confusion. It seems like you're one of us. The ones who got unlucky at birth. Parents whose love you have to earn aren't real parents. Do you really want to live like that? A slave to you. That's enough. And suddenly, it stopped. The pain disappeared as quickly as it came, and Nise was left on her knees, clutching her head and hyperventilating. Nise. Nise. You need to calm down. Just breathe, okay? In and out. Izuku instructed her. In and out. Fu had also ran in and massaged circles into her back to try and help her calm down. After a couple minutes, Nise managed to get her breathing back under control. Are you okay? Is anything hurting? Can you stand? Izuku asked her rapid-fire questions as he tried not to panic. I'm okay. Nise said, sounding extremely unsure. My head just hurts, and I heard some weird voices. Most of them sounded like him? Izuku and Fu looked at each other before looking back at her. Did some of your memories come back? Izuku asked her, feeling a pit growing in his stomach. I don't think so? Ni's answered. I don't remember anything but some words. Did I meet him before? Guess that cat's out of the bag. Fu thought. We met before when you first showed up here. Unfortunately, we got into a fight. But I don't hold it against you. You didn't really have much of a choice. So he was the one I fought. Nis felt a twinge of guilt. But at the same time, she also felt strangely reassured. Maybe it was because she knew he could handle her if she lost control of her quirk, but there was something else as well. Something was telling her to trust him. Given how little she knew, she'd have to follow that instinct. I'm sorry. Nis apologized, looking at Fu while also trying to understand why she felt the way that she did. Like I said, no problem, Fu said, before extending his hand. Do you want to come with me? Or do you need to stay with Dad? Nis hesitated, but after a few moments, but ultimately, she took his hand and let him help her up. I'll go with you. Good, good. First, let me show you your room. Fu said, as he took her by the hand and guided her away. As Fu took her away, Nis looked back at Izuku. I'll see you a bit later, just remember, you're safe here. Izuku reminded her before she eventually was out of sight. After a few moments, Izuku heard someone speak in his head. Something is very wrong with that girl. Yanda revealed herself, hiding behind the staircase, just out of sight. What do you mean, something is wrong? Izuku asked her quickly, as he started preparing himself for the worst. Did she get her memories back? Does she want to kill anyone? I don't think so, but I'm not sure. Yanda said, sounding a bit unsettled. When she was on her knees, I couldn't hear her thoughts clearly. What? Izuku looked at her in shock. It was like something was fighting inside of her head. Yanda explained as best she could. I've never heard anything like it before. I did hear what I think was Fu's voice, and another voice that sounded like hers, but it was angry. This is, damn it, why can't anything be simple? Izuku cursed, before sighing. You're sure she didn't have any thoughts about hurting anyone? Yanda shook her head. I didn't hear anything like that while she was freaking out, nor anything like that after, but this is very, very strange. I'm definitely going to have to keep watch of her. Please do. Izuku rubbed his temple. I feel terrible for having to rely on you like this. Am I really going to need to give you an allowance for spying on people? I really don't want to encourage that. Oh father, it's far too late for that. Yanda told him. And I don't need an allowance for this. Just remember all my hard work when I do something wrong. Izuku sighed again. Just please go after them. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. And this is your room, Fu told Nis, as he opened the door to her room. Nis looked inside, letting out Fu's hand to get a good look at where she would be living from now on. I know it's a bit plain, but you're free to decorate it in any way you'd like, Fu told her. Decorate? How would I decorate it? Nis thought to herself. I don't know what I like. It was starting to get it frustrating as it was scary, not knowing anything about herself. Because it left her confused and not knowing what to do. Well, do you want to stick around here for a while, or would you like to explore the rest of the building? Fu asked her. It's pretty big, so it might take a while. And I'd understand if you just want to relax in here for a while. Nis considered the offer. While part of her was a bit scared of wandering around and bumping into people she didn't know, but what would she even do in here? Think about how much she doesn't know. At least going around the house would give her something to do. I want to explore, Nis answered. Ha. Well, okay then. Fu said, before turning around. Make sure to follow me, don't want you getting lost. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. So this is the library, Fu said, as he guided Nis into the book-filled room. You can read, right? Nis nodded, as she looked around the room, her eyes landing on one of the tables, where Ken and Nara had been studying and were now trying to stay as quiet as possible. Oh, so those two are here, Fu said, noticing the pair. The girl is Nara, and the stupid-looking one is her brother Ken. Hey! Ken shouted out in annoyance, turning to glare at Fu. Then, Nice and Ken made eye contact, and after looking at each other for just a moment, Ken scowled and turned away again. Nice frowned, wondering if she did something wrong. Or, maybe he's upset because I tried to hurt Mr. Izuku. Seeing Nice's expression fall, Fu stepped in. Don't worry about them. Anyway, let's go. Fu turned Nice around, and the two exited the room. And as they left, a squishy sound coming from the ceiling followed. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Fu showed her around the rest of the house, the game room, the pool, the sports room, etc. And Nice would have tried to consider the things she could do in those rooms, if not for how uncomfortable she was. Every time they ran into someone, they seemed very cold towards her. Never looking her in the eyes for more than a second, if at all. And then of course there was the constant feeling of being watched. After the tour was done, Fu brought her back to her room. Well, that's pretty much everywhere in the house, well everywhere important, Fu told her. It should be about time for lunch. Just stay here, and I'll go get it for you. And with that, Fu left, closing the door and leaving Nice to her thoughts. Well, this place is better than the hospital, Nice surmised. The hospital had felt completely cold and hostile. Everyone either seemed to not care about her, or seem actively hostile. No one told her anything, and it would have been boring if it wasn't so terrifying. But here it was, while it was still kind of cold and hostile, it seemed like she'd left an impression on this place that wasn't exactly good. But at least Izuku and Fu were nice enough, and more than happy to explain things to her if she asked. Maybe things were really looking up for her. Then the door opened, and a black-cloaked figure, with a scythe for a hand, came in. Nice flinched, and stepped back, looking at the imposing figure carrying a weapon, with fear. Who are you? That's what I should be asking you, Gammy responded, his voice as cold and emotionless as ever. Along with, do you really have amnesia? Are you a MLA spy? Are you trying to kill Izuku? What? No. Nice was overwhelmed and scared. She kept backing up until she hit a wall, right under the window. With Nice's back against a wall, Gammy began moving forward, raising their scythe. I worked too hard to escape. I won't let them take me back. If you really have amnesia, then prove it. Then, Gammy charged forward, and everything went black. Chapter 136, Throwing Hands. Shit. Gammy/Sheena didn't like to curse, but shit was the only word they could think of to describe this horrible situation. The situation being that, when they had charged at Nice, two things happened. 1. Nice's expression suddenly changed. The scared and confused look in her eyes was suddenly replaced with cold fury. And the second thing that happened was that Gammy was grabbed by one of Nice's vectors and chucked out the window. Of course, the first problem, the least concerning one, was that Gammy was now falling out of a building. The solution to this was simple. Gammy quickly cut their own arm and killed their flightlessness. Immediately, black wings burst out of their back, and with a flap, Gammy was now flying. Gammy flew up to the window and faced his second biggest problem. That being that Nice certainly didn't seem to have amnesia. The two stared each other down, seeing who would make the first move. In the end, it was Gammy, as they charged forward, moving as fast as possible towards Nice, in hopes of getting the single hit they needed. Only to be batted away by Nice's specters, sending them flying over towards the forest. Nice then ran over to the window, and jumped out of it, while using her vectors, to launch herself into the air, after Gammy. Gammy meanwhile, tried to regain their sense of balance, however by the time they stabilized themselves in the air, Nice had already reached them, grabbing them with one of her vectors in the air, and slamming them down. Crash! Gammy hit the ground, in what he was sure would have been an agonizing experience if he could feel pain. That quirk is going to make things difficult for sure. Gammy thought as they picked themselves off the ground, while Nice slowly came to the ground, using her vectors to grab onto the trees and lower herself gently. I need to find a way to get past those vectors. When Knees reached the ground, she glared at Gammy. I don't want to fight you. I don't want to fight you either, Gammy admitted, while not at all looking like they wanted to stand down. But I can't let you ruin everything. Slice. Gammy then cut the ground and seemingly nothing happened. But then they cut the ground again, and something immediately happened. Suddenly, everything started to move as if it was on ice. The dirt, rocks, and grass moved and shifted, and the trees started to move through the ground and fall over. And Knees immediately fell on her butt and started slipping backward, while Gammy took to the air once more. What the? Knees shouted as she tried to stop herself from slipping by digging her vectors into the dirt, but that didn't work and she kept slipping. Unfortunately for her, nothing would keep her from slipping, as Gammy had killed all the friction in the area. But immediately, she noticed an even more pressing issue, that being that without friction, even the trees that were rooted in the ground couldn't keep still, and as such the trees were now falling down. And some of them would be falling on her if she didn't do anything. Immediately, Knees shifted her focus. Slice. Knees started slicing up the trees that were going to fall on her with 3 of her vectors, while using the last vector to push her around to avoid the already fallen trees. As Knees was sliding through the forest, Gammy flew after her, waiting for his opportunity to strike. And that opportunity would be coming soon. I just need to get out of the range of his quirk. Knees thought to herself. No matter how powerful a quirk is, it has to have limits. I just need to keep him OV. Slam. Before Knees could finish the thought, she found herself slamming into an invisible wall. A small explanation. When Gammy first sliced the ground, it didn't actually do nothing. What Gammy killed there was this space's connection to their dimension. In other words, Gammy had sealed everything within the small area they were in, into its own separate pocket dimension. Meaning, there was no escape. But it seemed like that wouldn't matter, as Gammy took advantage of Knees' surprise, and rushed to cut her back. Gammy came in and slashed at her back, only for him to accidentally hit the base of one of Knees' vectors, which he couldn't cut. Knees felt something hit her vectors, and quickly realized what happened, and before Gammy could get in a second strike, she used her vectors and grabbed Gammy by his wings, and held him up. Before Knees could take advantage of this, however, Gammy cut himself again, killing his wings, causing them to vanish, and Gammy to fall to the ground. As soon as he hit the still shifting dirt, Gammy pushed himself back, away from Knees. However, Knees wasn't going to let him get away that easy, and pushed herself off the invisible wall, towards Gammy, reaching him in little to no time at all. Gammy knew he would only have time to do one thing, before Knees grabbed him, so he had to think fast. And so just as Knees' vectors were grabbing his shoulders, Gammy cut themselves and killed their own friction. When Knees tried to grab him, her vectors just slipped off them, unable to grab something with 0 friction. Grrrrrrrr. Knees growled angrily, frustrated with the no friction thing by this point. Gammy then used his scythe to push himself forward and slid towards Knees, but of course, this didn't work and resulted in Knees backhanding them with one of their vectors, and sending them flying into the air. Now that he was once again a good distance away from Knees, he then cut himself again, killing his flightlessness, cancelling out his earlier use of his quirk, and regrowing his wings. Gammy looked down at Knees, who was still sliding around, chopping up trees in her way. I need to find a way to get past those vectors. Wait, that might work. Then, Gammy started flying around, swooping down to cut trees, and killing their gravity, making them float into the air. What on earth are they doing? Knees asked herself as she watched Gammy send more trees into the air. Knees then saw Gammy fly under the trees, and turn their back on her. She saw a chance to get in a hit on them, and used her vectors to change her direction, and launch herself towards Gammy, intent on smacking them towards the ground, and getting in a good few hits. However, this was all part of Gammy's plan. As he heard Knees launch herself towards him, he knew what he had to do. Normally, Gammy's quirk could not affect itself. Meaning Gammy couldn't just cut himself and kill his quirk's drawbacks or effects. However, there were workarounds to this. And so as Knees closed in on him, Gammy cut himself and killed his existence. Just like that, Gammy vanished, causing Knees' vectors to hit nothing. Suddenly, Knees felt a chill going down her spine, and felt something closing in on her from above. She looked up, and found out much to her horror, that since Gami currently didn't exist, neither did his quirk, or its effects, meaning, everything that was being affected by Gami's quirk would return to normal. That included the gravity of all the trees above her, which were now about to fall on top of her. Crash! The trees slammed into knees, and they crashed into the ground, pinning her to the ground. Almost immediately afterward, Gami, or rather Sheena, appeared back in the exact same spot. Since the effects of their quirk vanished when they ceased to exist, that meant nothing keeping them from existing, so that move, in particular, could only last for a moment. Ah! Ah! Sheena screamed in terror, as they immediately started falling to the ground. She quickly cut her arm again, killing her flightlessness, causing her wings to come back, which allowed her to safely come back to the ground. Phew! Sheena breathed a sigh of relief. I'm so glad that worked. If could feel emotions when I'm Gami would have started getting scared. Man, that girl was tough. Sheena looked at the huge pile of logs that Knees was currently buried under and started to worry. Wait, this wouldn't kill her, would it? Oh, I really hope she's not dead. I just got a new start on my life not killing people. Fortunately, or unfortunately depending on how you looked at it, Knees proved to be alive, when suddenly, the front of the pile of trees burst open, and Knees limped out. Back when Knees was about to get hit by the trees, she knew she couldn't dodge, nor could she cut up that many trees at once, when they were already so close to her. But she did still have one option. She wrapped her vectors around her body, covering herself in a psychic shield. This did still have some consequences, however. Her vectors had something called a psychic feedback. Whenever she used them, it would send a psychic shockwave through her body, which would start harming her body if she overused her quirk, or if her vectors were hit by something very strong. Like, say, a few dozen tons of wood. So while Knees was still alive and conscious, she was definitely hurt. Blood was coming from her mouth, and out of tears on her body, and she felt like she got hit by a bus. Ugh! Knees immediately fell to one knee and started breathing heavily. She's weak. This is my chance to end this, Sheena thought. She rushed forward, not wanting to give Knees a single second to recover. Her scythe was raised to strike her and Nuff! Suddenly, Sanson popped out of the ground and got in between Sheena and Knees, creating a giant slime wall with her body, with her head on top. Ha! Sheena jumped back, shocked at Sanson's appearance. What are you doing? No more fighting, Sanson told her with a pout. Gonna make Daddy angry. I'm just trying to make sure she doesn't kill anyone or drag me back to the MLA. Sheena said, defending her actions, while she hid her scythe behind her back and started secretly making small cuts on her leg. Did you see how she was fighting? There's no way someone with amnesia and no control over her quirk could fight like that. Well, you're right there. That is suspicious. Everyone looked to the right and saw Fu walking out of the woods. I saw some of the fight, and you are right. No one with no control over their quirk could fight like that, Fu said, before turning to Knees. Care to explain? Knees just paused, and then her eyes glazed over for a few seconds. And then, she blinked and started looking around. Ha! Where am I? Ow! Why does my body hurt so much? She then looked up at Sheena through Sanson and gasped in fear. It's the scary scythe girl. Please don't hurt me. I swear I won't do anything bad. Tears started rushing out of her eyes, and soon all of her words turned into incomprehensible babbling. You dummy, Sheena said, before she dashed at Knees, having had her enhanced strength and speed restored. That won't work. She went right through Sanson and came to Knees in no time. Slash! Aha! Knees cried out in pain, as Sheena created a small cut on her forehead. Immediately afterward, Sanson wrapped around Sheena, restaining her with all her might. There! I just killed her dishonesty. Now she can't lie anymore. Sheena said, not bothering to fight against Sanson. So tell us. Do you really have amnesia? Are you really not trying to kill anyone? Tell us. Nis just cowered in fear, unable to say a word as she trembled and shook. Move away from her, Fu ordered, and Sanson followed, moving a good distance back, and taking Sheena with her, before he went up to Nis, and knelt down beside her. As she looked at him with fear still in her eyes, but not as much as before now that Sheena had been restrained and taken away. Nis, listen. If you are innocent, then this is your best chance to prove it. So just take a moment. Breathe, and then answer us. Okay? Nis gave a very shaky nod. And after a couple of minutes, she managed to give an answer. I really don't remember anything. I really have amnesia. And don't want to kill anyone. Immediately Nis went back to crying, while Sheena just looked at her in pure shock. That's impossible, Sheena whispered, absolutely dumbfounded by what Nis just said. Did 9 minutes already pass since I cut her? Do you still have your super strength and speed? Fu asked her, getting a nod from the pale girl. Then 9 minutes haven't passed. And you're sure that you killed her dishonesty? Yes, Sheena admitted. Still extremely confused by what just transpired. Well, then there we go, Fu said, before turning back to Nis. But with that said, how did you do all that during your fight if you have amnesia? Fight? Nis looked up at him confused. What fight? You don't remember? You were just fighting against Sheena here. Fu told her. I don't remember that. When they ran at me, everything went black, and then I woke up here, Nis explained as best she could through the sobs. This only added to Sheena's shock, and at this point, she was just at a loss for words. Fu took a minute to ponder this before just shaking his head. Well, I guess that's that. Let her go, Sanson. Sanson did as she was told, and released Sheena from her hold. You, go back to your room. I'll ask Izuku to look over your wounds in there. I don't think you and Nis should both be in the same room right now. Fu instructed. And you can also take the time to explain to him what you did. Since he happened to be sleeping during the whole thing. Sheena just nodded, still too dumbfounded to talk, as she just walked back home in silence. Sanson, please carry Nis home, and take her to the med bay, Fu ordered. I still have something I need to do here. Sanson gave him a big thumbs up, before grabbing Nis, who flinched at her touch, before easing into it, Sanson's cool body doing wonders for her injured one. After the two of them left, Fu remained behind, waiting for a few moments, before beginning the conversation. So, any idea what that was? I think I might. Yonda said she stepped out from her hiding spot behind one of the fallen trees. And thank you for carrying me here. If you hadn't, I might have never figured out what was wrong with her. Enough with the fake politeness. Just tell me. Fu said, feeling slightly annoyed. This whole thing has been a giant mess, and I would appreciate just knowing a bit more about what the heck is going on. Ugh, fine. I forgot you're no fun. Yonda said, rolling her eyes. Anyway, do you recall that point where her eyes glazed over? Yes. Fu answered. What about it? Well, before that happened, her thoughts were completely different. Yonda revealed. Before her eyes glazed over, she thought stuff like, I just want a new life, and I think it's time for her to take control. Then after her eyes glazed over, her thoughts suddenly became, where am I? Why am I hurt? Etc. Okay? And that means what exactly? Fu asked. I think, and this is just a theory. Yonda said. That this girl has more than one personality. That will be it for this part. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and comment if you want part 24. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next one.